Hi guys, can you all hear me in the chat? Let me know if you can hear me before I start. Okay? So today we're going to be talking about the endocrine system. Now, we have two very important systems in our body, which are the nervous and the endocrine system. We already spoke before about the nervous system. Now, both of them work together for what they specialize in the coordination of our body activities. Okay? However, we have to understand the differences between the nervous system and the endocrine system. So in the nervous system uses what? Uses electrical impulses, while the endocrine system uses chemical messengers. Okay, and what do we call these chemical messengers that the endocrine system uses? We call these chemical messengers hormones. So basically, what are hormones? Hormones are chemicals produced by the endocrine cells, and these endocrine cells are usually grouped together to form what we call a gland. Okay, we call them endocrine glands, and these endocrine glands produce hormones. Now, these hormones, how are they released? Okay, they are released into the blood and they're carried through the circulatory system. And these hormones have a specific target. So they go to the target they want to affect, and they cause the changes, okay? And it's a form of communication. And what do we call the organ that the hormone targets? Basically, we call it a target organ, okay? We have examples of endocrine glands. Some examples would be what? The thyroid, pituitary, adrenal, okay? We also have the pancreas, kidneys, ovaries, and testes. They have endocrine cells, so they also have endocrine functions. And the hypothalamus, which is a portion of the brain, also produces hormones in addition to other vital neural functions. So before we continue, an example of a hormone that the adrenal gland produce, okay, would be the stress hormone. Pancreas release insulin and glucagon, and we'll look at them also mainly, okay? Now, we have two types of glands, okay? These two types of glands are what? Are the endocrine and the exocrine glands. What's the difference between these two? Endocrine glands secrete the chemicals where? Directly into the bloodstream. While in the exocrine, they will secrete them into ducts. Okay, so this is an important way to differentiate between endocrine glands and exocrine glands. Okay, so exocrine glands, it secretes these chemicals through special ducts. Okay? Now, the pancreas is special. Why is the pancreas special? Because it can perform both functions. It can perform an endocrine function and an exocrine function. Okay, let's go next. Here's just an example. As always, we always have a stimulus that causes a response. So, a stimulus occurs, causes the endocrine cells to release a hormone, which is the chemical messenger. It will go to its target organ, it will bind to specific receptors, and we will have a response. Now to move on to the organs, the pancreas organs, and the hormones they produce. So first, let's start with the pancreas. Remember, the pancreas, we said, has two functions. It has endocrine portion and an exocrine portion. Now, when we talk about the pancreas, what does it release? It regulates our blood glucose level. How does it regulate our blood glucose level? Look how. Okay. The endocrine portion, with the help, plays a significant role in this regulation of the supply of glucose. Here, I don't think they're going into specific details, so I'm not going to go into specific details. Also, the pancreas, remember we said, exocrine cells, and these exocrine cells secrete pancreatic juice into the special ducts to reach the small intestine. And remember, this pancreatic juice was important in the digestive system. Okay? The endocrine cells, what do they release? They release insulin and glucagon. So I will write it for you here. So pancreas has an endocrine function versus an exocrine. Not versus, they are together. Exocrine, remember, is through ducts. And an example would be the pancreatic juice, which was just in digestive system. Okay, it plays a role in the digestive system. But when we look at the endocrine function, it's for the regulation of blood glucose level. How do you regulate blood glucose level? Two ways. We have insulin and glucagon. Now the functions of each, of course, you guys have to know them. Insulin decreases blood glucose level, while glucagon increases blood glucose level. And I think you guys can tell when insulin is released and when glucagon is released by knowing their function. So they tell you the person has a high blood glucose level. Of course, the pancreas would release insulin to decrease it, while if a person has a low blood glucose level, the pancreas would release glucagon to decrease this, to increase the low blood glucose level. Okay, let's move on. Okay, this is just a type of disease that could occur. So, this table summarizes it. In a healthy person, once we consume a meal with glucose, our pancreas would release insulin to lower the blood glucose level, because having a high blood glucose level is unhealthy. Now, in type 1 diabetes, the pancreas cells cannot produce insulin. They're unable to. It's an autoimmune disease where your own cells target the cells that produce insulin, so no insulin would be produced. While in type 2 diabetes, it's because we have an unhealthy lifestyle. So we keep on consuming sugary stuff. The receptors for insulin become insensitive to insulin. So even if insulin is produced, the cells will not respond to it because they became insensitive to it. They need a great amount of insulin to be able to respond, and this is what type 2 diabetes is. Now moving on to adrenal glands. Directly from the name, adrenal glands are going to secrete adrenaline. What does adrenaline do? Increases your breathing rate. It's for the fight or flight, okay? Here, as I told you, this hormone is involved in the fight or flight response. So increased heart rate, increased breathing rate, dilution of the eyes, stops your digestive system, okay? So this is the function of the adrenal gland to secrete adrenaline. Now, if we move to the ovaries and testes, the testes will release testosterone, and this testosterone is important for the development of secondary or male sexual characteristics, and it also plays a role in regulating the bone density and muscle size and strength, while the ovaries are going to secrete estrogen and progesterone. Okay, and these are also responsible for the activity of the female reproductive organs and for the development of the secondary female sexual characteristics at puberty. Okay? Now the thyroid. What does the thyroid release? It releases T3 and T4. And this T3 and T4, what's it responsible for? It's responsible for our metabolism, heart rate, body temperature. Okay? Now, if we have an excess T3 and T4, we would have an irregular heartbeat, excessive sweating, and weight loss. Okay, so make sure you know each gland and what hormones it releases. Now the pituitary gland and the hypothalamus. Remember, the pituitary gland, what does it do? It regulates the activity of other endocrine glands. So think about it sort of like the boss. So it regulates what other endocrine glands should release and should not release. An example would be what? The pituitary gland releases LH and FSH, okay? And TSH, okay? And these LH and FSH affect what? Affect the ovaries. And we already said the ovaries is a endocrine gland. So it is basically affecting both. So it produces a hormone that affects another endocrine gland, which would release another hormone too. And the same thing for the hypothalamus. So these are just examples you would have to know. And then we go to homeostasis. Always, whenever you think about homeostasis, you think about a stable internal condition. And this is the function of all the organ systems. So all the organ systems in our body function to perform or to keep homeostasis, okay, which is a stable internal environment. One way it could be thermoregulation. It's how we regulate our body temperature, okay? And this would be through the hypothalamus. So remember, if there's an increase in temperature, it's hot, we would sweat. However, if it's cold, we would start shivering, okay, to create heat in order to stay warm. So these are also just examples of how we can achieve homeostasis and can achieve thermoregulation. Okay, and we also have two mechanisms to do that. We have negative feedback and positive feedback. So negative feedback is the more something is produced, it will stop the production. So let's say I want to produce let's say hormone A, okay? The more of hormone A, let's say B produces hormone A. This is my endocrine gland, okay, and it's producing a specific hormone A. As more A is produced, this increase in A will inhibit B. So no more A will be produced. So it basically regulates itself through a negative feedback mechanism. Okay? And these are at the end, the differences between endocrine and nervous. We already said them. One uses electrical impulses, the other uses hormones, chemical messengers. Also know that the nervous system is faster however, it's short-ranged, while the endocrine system takes longer, but it's also long range, okay? And this is a good table to highlight the differences between the endocrine system and the nervous system, okay? And we also have, of course, commercial use of these hormones. For example, anabolic steroids and other examples. They can also use them in agriculture and in different industries. So you can just take a look at it. It's not difficult. Okay, that's it for the chapter. There's not much to talk about in the endocrine system. Mainly, I would say for the people who are watching this, because I might... okay, for the people who are watching this, make a list of all the endocrine glands and write what hormones they produce and the function of these hormones. I know the comparison table between the endocrine system and the nervous system, and I think you will be fine. Okay? That's it for the video. I don't think there's anyone in the chat to ask questions. However, if... Okay, we have a question. Can you repeat the negative and positive feedback? Okay, I'm going to show you the example I explained already. Or let's use the examples they used. Maybe it will be easier. Okay. So look here. So we said the pituitary gland is a endocrine gland. And its function is to regulate the release of other hormones. So pituitary gland releases TSH. What is TSH? Thyroid Okay, it releases thyroid stimulating hormone. Okay, it's not working to write it, so خلاص. Just whatever. So it releases thyroid stimulating hormone. This thyroid stimulating hormone will affect what? The thyroid gland. Now, what does the thyroid gland produce? T3 and T4. Remember, T3 and T4 are important for metabolism, body regulation, okay? The more T3 and T4 are produced, they will start inhibiting the pituitary gland. So, if I have a lot of T3 and T4, the pituitary gland would stop producing TSH. So, since there is no more TSH being produced, okay, we will not have more T3 and T4. To go back to this example here, let me draw it again. Let's say you have A, okay, that's an endocrine gland. And it's producing a hormone B. Now, I don't want this hormone to be in a very high amount, because it's bad if it's in a very high amount. So if I produce B, and I'm producing a lot of B, so my body regulates the amount of B available. As there's an increase in B, it will cause the inhibition of endocrine gland A. This is for negative feedback. Now let's say it's positive feedback. In positive feedback, I want more of this hormone being produced. So for example, when a female is giving birth, she releases oxytocin, which helps in the contractions to allow the fetus to exit, okay? So again, we have A, which is the endocrine gland, that's producing a hormone B. I want more of this hormone. So as the level of it increases, instead of it inhibiting A, it will stimulate it even more. So it stimulates A even more to even further increase the amount of the hormone that is available. That's the difference between negative feedback and positive feedback. Is that clear, Omar? You're most welcome. Thank you for joining in. I hope the session helped. And best of luck on your exam, guys. Thank you so much and see you soon.